Hello, beautiful humans. It's a great day to remind you that child SA is still rampant in the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints. And here we have yet another instance when the LDS Church failed to protect children by failing to report an offender rather than protecting him instead of the kids. This is Jeffrey Butler Rock, and he pleaded guilty to what you can see here on the screen in 2024, and he was just sentenced on February 2nd of this year. I've been talking behind the scenes with some family members as well as some other people who knew this man. And the reason why I want to call attention to this story is not to be critical of individual members of the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints, but to remind everybody that the LDS Church could put very simple policies into place that would protect children, and yet they have refused to do so. This is yet another instance when someone who was an offender was allowed to continue to do what they were doing for decades before they were finally held accountable. So I have the full story for you here. It is also on floodlit.org, which I will share with you that part of the story in just a minute. And then I have a couple of different resources that I want to make sure that I plug you into. Now, whenever I do these stories, I get a lot of pushback from faithful members of the church that say that it's not the church's fault that they have predators in their midst. Well, the reason that I keep doing these stories over and over is because they obviously have a systemic problem. They protect the predators. And so the predators talk to each other and they all say, this is a safe place for you to find unwitting victims. And you can get away with a lot in this church, because the thing that the LDS Church seems to be focused on is protecting its reputation and protecting itself from litigation rather than protecting children. Now, the main thing that I want people to take away from all of these episodes that I do regarding what Floodlit is reporting on and the offenders that are just running wild in the church is that SA against children is a crime, not a sin. And that the first thing anyone should do is call 911 when they know that a child is being harmed. Period. End of story. There's no hotline that's more important. The church's reputation is not more important. The litigation is not more important. What is important is protecting children. And the LDS Church has proven over and over that that's not their priority. Because if you just look at their litigation history and the ways that they protect themselves, they have an abuse hotline that is set up, which we've talked about before, but I will go into extensively in another episode, where the main questions that are being asked are, did this happen on church property? And was the offender in church leadership? And most of the time, if it didn't happen on church property or during a church activity, they tell the bishop, you're good, you don't need to do anything. What the bishop should do, and in many cases what they do, is call 911. But some bishops get that counsel from the church, who are actually, that hotline is staffed largely by attorneys. They instead realize that, oh, the church is telling me I don't have to report this and I'm all good. And in fact, the LDS Church discourages bishops from getting involved in any kind of litigation that involves members of their congregation. And so that's where their priority is. Well, here we have Jeffrey Butler Rock. He's 7 years old. And the story that I really want people to get out there is that this man was allowed to continue to offend over and over and all over the world. And if you were a member or are a member in one of these locations during the time that he was there, it's likely that children around you had contact with this individual. It's likely that more victims will come forward. There are 5 members of this man's family who have come forward as victims. One of those cases has been put to rest, as he did plead guilty to the charges and he was sentenced, but he was only sentenced to 18 months in jail for acts that took place over the course of 3 years, which I think is pretty disgusting. A second family member who has come forward with litigation, that case has not yet been settled and no charges have been filed in that case. But again, there are 3 other family members that have made accusations who have not yet seen justice. And chances are, if this man was offending in his own family, he was probably offending in other places too. And I actually do have a witness statement from somebody who was close to the family who claims that they were groomed by this man and had deep psychological scars because of what this man did. So I first want to talk about a contact that I went to initially with this story because I saw it on Floodlit and they were looking for possible pictures of this man. I went digging around and was able to find some pictures of him, but I wanted some confirmation. So I reached out to someone who I knew was in the area. And I sent the Facebook profile to this person who is my contact. And they confirmed, yes, that is the man. At the time, they didn't have this picture of him. Now it's been published, thank goodness. But I want everybody to know that he was in Corona, California, in Taipei, Taiwan, in Suva, Fiji, in Jakarta, Indonesia, in Bangkok, Thailand, and in Provo, Utah. He served in the church in all of those positions. And to make matters worse, he worked for the State Department as a foreign service officer. And so he was somebody who was held in high regard and somebody who was very well trusted. Now, his career with the State Department ended over these allegations. So I find it interesting that his career ended before his church membership did, because it never did. He was disfellowshipped, but not until 2023. And as far as I can tell from researching this case history, the second time that the LDS Church was alerted of this man's activities was in 2011. It took them until 2023 to disfellowship this man. Now, in LDS speak, disfellowshipping is basically just a slap on the wrist. It means that you can't speak or pray publicly and you can't hold an official calling with the church, but you can still attend church meetings. You can still have proximity to children. And as we'll find out later, when he was living in Provo, Utah, he was babysitting the children of other congregation members. Let that sink in. That's pretty gross. And all the LDS Church would have had to do was put him on a list of offenders and let people know he wasn't safe around kids. But they refused to do that. Instead, they focus on the repentance process of the offender and basically tell everybody to forgive and forget. So let's dig into this story. The first thing that I want to read to you is a Facebook post that came from the stepson of this man, Jeffrey Butler Rock. And that Facebook post was published in 2017 by his stepson, trying to alert people of the danger surrounding this man. And I apologize because I'm having issues. I'm having technical issues whenever I share my screen that I tend to freeze. And so I'm trying not to share my screen and be speaking at the same time. So I'm trying to use a second screen over here. Mel Stiller, this is a great question. Why does the LDS Church do that? Well, they want the men in the church to feel like they can be forgiven. And they think that, and this is why I say this all the time, SA of a child is a crime, not a sin. They look at the LDS Church looks at it as a sin. And all you have to do is repent. And you go through the repentance process, you stop taking the sacrament for a little while, and then all of a sudden, through the atonement of Jesus Christ, your sin is just taken away and there's no problem anymore. Well, the issue with that is that SA of children is a mental health problem. It is not a sin. It's a crime against children. It's one of those things that it doesn't just go away. It doesn't get better with age. It's something that has to be treated by competent mental health professionals. And even in those cases, there's good evidence to suggest that the desire never goes away at all. It's just like somebody who is an alcoholic. They never stop being an alcoholic. It's just that those of them who choose to heal choose not to expose themselves to situations where they would be tempted to relapse. So they don't go to a bar. They don't have alcohol in their home. They don't hang out with friends who drink. They hang out with sober friends. It's almost the same with predation of children. If you don't have proximity to children, the likelihood of reoffending is much smaller. However, the LDS Church wants these people to think that it's just a sin that can be overcome. Anything can be overcome by the atonement of Jesus Christ. The problem is that leaves out the fact that that's no replacement for competent mental health therapy and other treatments. So the likelihood that someone is going to reoffend if they don't get help is very high likelihood. McSpunky, you don't need to ask my forgiveness because you can just forgive yourself and move on. Anyway, yes, the complicity of the leaders from the low to the higher up, the members that make excuses for these monsters. And that's something we're going to talk about too, because there definitely were members and there were leaders who knew about this or should have known, because in the LDS Church, members have to go through temple recommend interviews. It used to be every single year up until about 10 years ago. Then it was every 2 years. So at the very least, he probably would have been confessing to priesthood leaders at some point. And the mission presidents and the area presidencies definitely should have known something was going on here or even knew the details of it. First, I want to read this Facebook message that was written in 2017 by Patrick Rock. And I also want to say a huge, I don't know, I congratulations is seems like the wrong thing to say. I just have a big hug. I have a big amount of respect, a huge amount of respect for the family members who have come forward and publicly denounced this man's behavior. It takes a lot of courage to do that. And I'm so grateful for people who are willing to do that. So please forgive me as I'm going to read off screen. But this Facebook post was made by Patrick Rock. That's Jeffrey Butler Rock's stepson back in 2017. Thank you so much, McSpunky, for your support. I always love seeing you, and I appreciate you supporting the channel, paying your tithing. That's funny. Patrick Rock says, this message needs to be spread if possible. The man below, and he has a picture, obviously, but it's similar to this picture, is Jeffrey Butler Rock. As a single mother of 2 children, my mother married this man, not realizing that he was a violent predator. I'm leaving some words out because of the platform police over here, but I hope that you will fill in the blanks on your own. We lived in many countries abroad. Countries abroad. Utah from 1978 to 1980, California from 1981 to 1986, Taiwan from 1987 to 1989, Fiji from 1990 to 1992, Thailand from 1992 to 1996, Indonesia from 1997 to 2000. We were isolated. He was a diplomat. His immunity protected him from the local authorities. His victims, myself, my mom, and my sister, reached out to the LDS Church for help. He lied to them. They protected him with misguided mercy. I think that's the perfect way to phrase that, misguided mercy and leniency. And he used their principles and good intent to his advantage. We were devastated by the continual lack of results our pleas resulted in. Jeffrey Butler Rock is a smart man, educated, and religious. Others see him in only what he permits. He used our isolation, his position, and threats to control and silence us. Eventually, people thought we were emotionally unstable and bitter and simply needed to move on. Jeffrey Butler Rock was a pillar of every community, gregarious in his gift-giving and active with children and youth. In the mid-2000s, during a regular State Department exam, suspicions were raised. The FBI contacted my sister, by then a married adult with children, and Jeffrey Butler Rock's employment was terminated. So let that sink in, you guys. The State Department was giving routine exams, and something concerning came up, and this man was fired by the State Department. But nothing fishy was found by the leadership of the church, with all their powers of discernment, their ability to tell when somebody is sinning. He goes on to say, I am now nearly 40 years old, and I'm speaking out because I have finally found my courage. This man has fled to single mothers like my mom, fled to Thailand, where he operates with impunity. He has been engaged with single mothers like my mom who have young children. I have done my best to warn them off, but I am just one person. He likes to befriend families with young children and offers to babysit and entertain them. I am afraid there are other victims. Most certainly there are. My friends, my classmates, kids I went to camp with, did sports with, Boy Scouts with, my cousins. Please, if you were hurt by him or touched in inappropriate ways, contact me. My mom and my sister and I will no longer allow the church to protect him. We are standing up for others and will do whatever we can to protect others from becoming his victim. Together, perhaps we can stop him and get him registered as an offender. This is how it happens with cunning and secrecy and lies and manipulation and gaslighting. These predators don't prey on strangers, but the pure of heart and the forgiving, those close to them. They rely on the apathy of government and the limitations of enforcement funds to protect them. Do not be scared or silent. If he hurt you, please contact me. And this is Patrick Rock, and I believe he can still be contacted on Facebook. Now, again, I heard about this story because floodlit.org was reporting on it. And so I want to share this with you. This is the Floodlit report. And at the time this report came out, they did not have a picture of this man, and they were asking people for information. And essentially, what we would love to have happen is if people in the locations where this man attended church would ask around to other members if they knew him, interacted with him, or had anything inappropriate happen while they were in this man's proximity, because victims are always empowered when they hear the stories of other victims. So this is what the Floodlit report says. Jeffrey Rock, who was born in 1955, was a former Mormon branch president. Now, a branch president is similar to a bishop over a congregation. It's just that a branch president is a bishop over a smaller congregation. So he would have had access to children, and he would have been asked specifically to conduct interviews with children prior to baptism and then once a year to assess their worthiness. Many bishops and branch presidents used those worthiness interviews as an opportunity to ask inappropriate questions about touching and other things that children may have been engaged in. Again, these interviews now start in the LDS Church at the age of 11 years old. Floodlit goes on to say, he was a State Department employee. He lived in California, Utah, Fiji, and Thailand. He pleaded guilty in 2025 to 3 charges of battery, and he was sentenced on February 2nd, 2026 in Utah to 18 months in jail. That's all. The Mormon Church knew about alleged child SA, but failed multiple times over years to alert civil authorities, according to Rock's relatives. Now, this particular crime happened in the 2000s, although he could have and probably was a predator for many other years, 1985 through 2023. The crime city happened actually in Bangkok and Provo, Utah, and also in California. The positions that he held when he was a member of the church were bishopric counselor, which again would have been interviewing children on a regular basis, branch president, elders quorum, which is the men's organization, nursery, which is for children from the ages of 18 months old to 3 years, where generally speaking, one person was alone in the nursery with children for 2 hours during Sunday services. Let that sink in as well. They didn't start having 2 people in the nursery until probably 15 years ago or so. Up until then, it would have just been one person, and they were always so desperate to get somebody to serve in the nursery that if someone volunteered, they were ecstatic and overjoyed and did not ask any questions. So the other callings would have been a scout leader, which again, Boy Scouts from the age of 8 to 18. Stake High Council, which would have been somebody who traveled around to different wards giving talks. Temple Liaison, which would have been helping people, new members, prepare to go to the temple. And Youth Leader, which would have been activities every single week, youth conference, overnight activities, many, many opportunities to be alone with teenagers and children. It's alleged that he has multiple victims, an unknown number. He admitted guilt. He pled guilty to this. He was convicted. He received jail time. There was a plea deal. He pleaded guilty to lesser charges. And the allegations is that the church officials are accused of allowing interaction with children after notice of wrongdoing, counseling and therapy for the victim. He was disfellowshipped, and a high-level official was accused of failure to report. Officials allegedly gave the accused a church duty after admission of wrongdoing, which is not uncommon, unfortunately. A ward official was accused of failure to report. So Floodlit is always an advocate for victims to come forward and contact Floodlit. If you knew this man or were a victim of him, they are very confidential. I have worked with them personally on my past cases to get the word out about individuals that might be offenders, people by whom I was abused and may have gone on to abuse other people. Floodlit says we've communicated with multiple abuse survivors in this case, and we're trying to raise public awareness of how Mormon officials may have responded to learning about alleged abuse by Rock. And as always, the website floodlit.org documents lawsuits, convictions, and news stories involving lay leaders accused of abuse, as well as cases where the LDS Church is accused of failing to adequately address reports of the same. So please go to floodlit.org. Please share their stories and please donate to them. They have obtained court records in Rock's case thanks to these donations. There's a full synopsis of everything that they have here, as well as the sources and links to his Utah Exchange court records. Now, I have an article to share from News 12 in Arizona that will give us, sorry, I don't know what's going on with my screen sharing, that will give us a full report of everything that happened. And I'm just going to give a warning because please take care of your mental health. These are obviously sensitive subjects. And if you are a survivor, then these topics might be disturbing to you. But I think it's always important for us to talk about these things openly and to raise the awareness so that other survivors can come forward. McSpunky, this is really awful, but it doesn't surprise me, unfortunately. Angel, thank you for being here and for modding. Real for Life, good to see you. It's good to be back, you guys. It's been a long time. I feel like we haven't seen each other in a while, and I'm happy to be here, although I don't enjoy reporting on these, but I am passionate about it. Trace on the Case, good to see you as well. Thanks, guys, for always, as always, for being here. I really appreciate you. So this news article can be found at 12news.com. This is from the local news station in Phoenix, Arizona. And they report, the title of the article is called "An Arizona Family Sent Their Grandfather to Jail. They Worry About Other Victims." It says Rock was a U.S. State Department official and held leadership roles in LDS congregations around the world. Sorry, I apologize. 5 family members have alleged SA. In June 2024, Utah prosecutors charged Rock with aggravated SA of a child, which is a first-degree felony. The victim is Rock's now adult granddaughter who lives in Arizona. She accused Rock of SA when she was between ages 5 and 8. Rock pleaded guilty to 3 lesser charges of battery in December and was sentenced on February 2nd. And I knew about this case in December, but at the time he was not in custody. And many were concerned that he would not come forward for his actual sentencing if publicity of the case got out. So I've refrained on reporting on it until now. During sentencing, Utah District Court Judge Denise Porter said Rock had, quote, blamed everyone but himself for his criminal conviction before Rock was led away in handcuffs. Since the 1980s, Rock held positions of trust as a Boy Scout leader and local lay minister in LDS congregations in Utah, California, and many countries. Rock also carried credibility because he was a high-level official with the U.S. State Department. His behavior, so this is a quote by Parani Shipley, who lives in Peoria, Arizona, who was raised by Rock. She says, quote, his behavior was always very conducive to grooming behavior, and he consistently put himself in positions to be around children. We are worried there are others, especially because of the positions of influence he held in the LDS Church. 12 News contacted Rock's attorney, Jacob Gunter. They did not respond with any kind of comment. Salt Lake City-based LDS Church did not confirm leadership positions Rock has held. However, a spokesperson confirmed the church, quote, placed restrictions on Rock's membership in 2023. That's the disfellowshipment that I was talking about before, where he wouldn't be allowed to speak or pray or hold a calling in the church, but he was certainly allowed to attend and have proximity to children. A total of 5 relatives of Rock have publicly accused him of SA in police reports, written statements to the LDS Church, and the 2017 Facebook post that I just read to you. A second grandchild filed a police report in Surprise, Arizona in 2023, alleging SA dating back several years. That investigation has not resulted yet in charges. In 2017, an adult stepson of Rock, Patrick, alleged in a Facebook post that he grew up in terror and wanted to alert others. He described Rock as a gregarious pillar of the community, but a, quote, violent predator to his family members. He said, quote, we lived in many countries abroad. I've already read this. Myself, my mom, and my sister reached out to the LDS Church for help. He lied to them. They protected him with misguided mercy. Rock was part of an LDS congregations in Corona, California, Provo, Utah, Virginia, Taipei, Taiwan, Suva, Fiji, Jakarta, Indonesia, Bangkok, Thailand, and Beijing, China. Over 4 decades, he held volunteer positions, including branch president, high councilman, youth leader, Boy Scout leader, primary counselor, save family members now estranged from Rock. As recently as 2022, the LDS Church appointed Rock to be a bishop's counselor in Bangkok, Thailand, according to Shipley. Rock was also on a church public affairs committee in Bangkok during the construction and dedication of the temple there, according to one source familiar with that committee who spoke with 12 News. Shipley's description of being raised by Rock as her stepdaughter is dark. She alleges Rock used a hidden camera, phone surveillance, drugs, and physical abuse to stalk her. Shipley alleges that she was SA'd by Rock beginning around age 5 until she left her Thailand home in 1995 to attend college at BYU in Provo. Quote, when I was a girl, he would use cold medicine to make me drowsy. We decided grape was the easiest flavor for me to take. I would wake up while he ended up using stronger prescriptions when I got older. A lot of the did not involve drugs. Shipley said that she and her mom reported Rock to local church leaders, and Rock was disciplined in Thailand for 2 years. Again, that disfellowshipment that we talked about. However, the abuse did not stop because, as we all know, just telling someone they can't pray in church is not going to deter them enough to stop what they're doing. She says, quote, over and over, we were told to support him and help him with his repentance process, but we were never offered help, Shipley said. This is how the LDS Church treats victims. LDS Church media specialist Jennifer Wheeler tells 12 News, quote, anyone who abuses others should be subject to all that the law requires and will also face formal review and restrictions from local and ecclesiastical leaders, which may include the loss of their membership in the church, which is the typical thing that everybody says. But we all know that people slip through the cracks and don't get disciplined. And even when they do, that does not solve the problem. Again, call 911, protect children, period. Shipley said, so sorry, ad pop-ups drive me crazy when I'm trying to read articles. Take me a second to get back to it. Shipley said she and her mom reported Rock to local church leaders and Rock was disciplined. Okay, already said that part. Okay, Shipley said as an adult, she communicated again to the church about Rock's abusive history. While receiving therapy from LDS Family Services in Arizona in 2011, she requested the church place a red flag on Rock's church records globally. Rock was living in Provo at the time and would soon move out of the country again. At the time, the family still had contact with him. Now, LDS Family Services is a group that was set up by the LDS Church to give counseling to members who are going through struggles like divorce or like any kind of this type of sin or situation. And I had many experiences with LDS Family Services where the therapists were very much trained to tell the person that their faith needed to be stronger, that they needed to pray harder, they needed to rely on Jesus Christ more, and that would make their mental health struggles easier to bear. When you are a victim of SA, that's not something that is going to work. Victims of SA need help that is away from a religious system. So this was 2011. Shipley said that LDS Services told her a Utah law firm acting on behalf of the church, which we know the church's law firm is Curtin McConkie, requested that she provide dates and locations of the alleged events and no other details, just dates and locations, which again supports the narrative that when you call the hotline, all they want to know is, did it happen on church property or during a church activity? And was there a church leader involved? That's all they want to know. Nothing about the victim. She says, quote, I provided it all, and 2 weeks later, my therapist, with tears in his eyes, said that he was told to tell me word for word that, quote, I am no longer to concern myself with the membership of Jeff Rock in the church, and I need to focus on my own healing, and that I must still have healing that needs to take place, or I would not have found myself in their counseling services. So a victim was told that they should not concern themselves with whether or not this individual was a member, and that they had their own issues, otherwise they wouldn't need social services. You don't get much more of a victim blaming scenario than that. She says it felt like they were saying, mind your own business. 2 years later, Rock told family members in a September 2013 email he had been appointed to a stake leadership position, which is the High Council in Bangkok, assisting other lay leaders who oversaw youth and primary programs, which is the youngest children in the church, according to Shipley. She says, "We have worried the church did not put guardrails in place to protect others from him," and it certainly sounds like they did not. In November 2023, Shipley traveled to Salt Lake to personally deliver a written dossier of allegations against Rock to the LDS Church's top 15 leaders in Salt Lake City, Utah. At the time, Rock was living in Thailand. The packet of information contained claims of SA by Shipley, who was the stepdaughter, Rock's stepson, and Rock's niece, Cami Malden. It also contained a letter written by Rock's ex-wife, who lived with Rock for nearly 2 decades, alleging severe physical and SA by Rock against her. Jeff has spent a lot of money to lure vulnerable women with children to get close to him, said the ex-wife Jessica. I'm sorry, I'm going to butcher this last name. Chantawishian, I think. "I have spread the words of warning to some of my friends about Jeff's being a offender and to stay away from him." Chantawishian and relatives of Rock asked the church to ensure that Rock was not in a position of authority. They also requested policy changes to prevent the likelihood of church volunteers being alone with children in the future. And that was 2023. The family's concerns reflected a larger debate. Again, this is from News 12 in Phoenix, Arizona, and I just want to give them all the credit for this story. The church relies exclusively on local worshipers to voluntarily fill leadership roles. The organizational model has come under criticism over the past decade, particularly as it relates to men in leadership positions who often hold one-on-one worthiness interviews with children and teens. These concerns were reflected in one investigation by News 12 in 2024, which detailed a former Arizona ward bishop, akin to the role of a local pastor, who was accused of groping, unwanted touching, and SA by 5 girls and 7 women dating back to the 1980s. Again, decades and decades and decades of this behavior that just went unchecked. In 2018, a former bishop whose name was Sam Young, who I personally hold out as a hero in this fight, made national headlines by publicly demanding it ban explicit youth interviews. The church responded, and I'm going away from the article for right now to remind everybody, the church responded by excommunicating this man for asking the church to stop these interviews and to protect children by allowing parents to be present in these one-on-one interviews. They excommunicated this man, and then they updated their guidelines for worthiness interviews, which then did allow parents to come into the interview process instead of being alone with a leader. So the church did update their guidelines, their worthiness interviews, and it now requires adults working with children and youth to complete the church's child protection training, which I've been through. It is lackluster at best. I had to go through much more rigorous things as a teacher on an ongoing basis and pass a background check, by the way, to be a teacher, which the church could very easily implement the policy of having background checks for every single adult who works with children in the church, but they don't. Do you know why? Because they don't care. That's not their priority. They have plenty of money to do it. It would be a simple practice to implement. You could assign somebody in the ward to be the one to do the background checks. And they also could have a list of offenders available to ward members on their LDS Tools app, but they don't do any of these things because, again, their priority is in protecting their reputation, not in protecting children. Sorry, proud mom moment, which I will have to edit out later. So, During the same month that Shipley submitted complaints to the LDS Church headquarters, a local representative of the church contacted Shipley to tell her Rock had been released from his position of counselor, akin to an associate pastor, in Bang Na, Thailand. Shipley said she could not believe he would be allowed to have such a position in the first place. But of course, we're glad that they removed him finally, but not until 2023. Again, Wheeler, who is that LDS Church spokesperson, tells 12 News, quote, in 2023, the church received letters regarding this individual and encouraged family members and others to report concerns and cooperate with the criminal investigation. The church placed restrictions on this individual and does not allow him to participate in any activities or meetings involving youth or children. Does that include sacrament meeting? Because there are youth and children in the congregation in sacrament meetings. So is he still allowed to go and sit by children? Did you alert any of the parents that this man was not to be around children? Because I can see somebody coming in as a visitor sitting right next to this man with their young children, especially if he volunteered to help them out, and they wouldn't be none the wiser. But no, they did not do that. 12 News asked the LDS Church if local leaders where Rock has moved to had access to records of previous claims against Rock. 12 News also asked if the church has records of any other allegations against Rock in the many congregations where he's been a member. Wheeler did not provide responses to those two questions. Another reason Rock's family is speaking out is because a non-relative accuses Rock of, quote, calculated grooming when she was young. According to a written statement submitted to Utah Justice Court in January, the woman writes that when she was living in Thailand in the early 1990s, Rock began giving her, quote, inappropriate attention when she was 15. She says, quote, I was both a close friend and classmate of his stepdaughter when his predatory behavior toward me began. The woman alleges Rock corrupted her understanding of what trust means. She said the grooming process itself left deep psychological scars. I continue to suffer from intense emotional distress, persistent anxiety, sleepless nights, and panic attacks. This all sounds very familiar because grooming can be just as damaging as the actual SA itself. Now, here's something that is incredibly disturbing and another reason why we really need to spread the word about this person. Shipley hopes anyone who had contact with Rock will spread the word about his various church positions where he would have had contact with children and teens. Between 1985 and 1995, Rock lived in Corona, California. Again, I'm going to keep saying this. Taipei, Taiwan, Suva, Fiji, and Bangkok, Thailand. He then lived in Jakarta, Indonesia between 95 and 98. While in Indonesia, Rock was a branch mission leader and was assigned as a home teacher to a family with 7 children, Shipley said. Now, a home teacher is somebody who is assigned to come into the home once a month to check on the family's well-being and also to be sort of on call to show up and help if there's any kind of an emergency or distressing situation. So, for example, if you're a single mom and your sink is clogged, you would call your home teacher to come help you unclog the sink. If you were a family and you had to move, or if there was some kind of problem at your house, you would call your home teacher to come and give you a blessing or to help out with things around the house. If a tree limb fell in your yard, you'd call your home teacher to come over with a chainsaw and help you take care of it. So home teachers were basically on call. And if this family had 7 children, I'm willing to bet that he offered to babysit for those children so that the parents could have a break. Rock returned to Bangkok, Thailand, and lived there between 1998 and 2001. For the next several years, he worked in Iraq and China before moving to Provo, Utah in 2009, where he lived for about 3 years. Shipley says, quote, while he lived in Provo, we have credible reason to believe he babysat children of families in his home ward during that time period. During the time, family members held an intervention with Rock. We told him to remove himself from being in the lives of children at church, scouts, and with babysitting, Shipley said. He got angry. By 2011 or 12, Rock moved back to China, where he lived for several years and volunteered at the House of Hope orphanage near Beijing. Again, just getting himself access to children wherever he can. Shipley says, I have since contacted the orphanage to notify them about the allegations. An administrator confirmed he was there for a time. It's not clear based on website information if the orphanage is still running today. 12 News was unable to contact the organization. By 2015, Rock was back in Thailand, where he held volunteer positions in the church as a high councilman and bishopric counselor in the Bang Na ward in southeast Bangkok, Shipley said. Rock is also listed online as a faculty member in the Helping Hands Thailand program at the Paris University of International Education. He's also head of academics at a university in Ratanoskan, sorry, I don't know how to pronounce this, in the same locality in Thailand. According to that school's website, his bios describe him as a former State Department official. 12 News sent messages to both schools to ask if Rock is still employed and did not receive responses. The U.S. State Department has not responded to requests for Rock's employment records. The website, floodlit.org, documents lawsuits, convictions, and news stories involving lay leaders accused of abuse, as well as cases where the LDS Church is accused of failing to adequately address reports of abuse. Shipley said she hopes fellow members of the faith she grew up in will be aware of signs of grooming. She says he has always aligned himself with young people, sharing secrets with them to make them feel special. If you have information about this man, about this case, or if you have been in a position where you've been vulnerable, I strongly, strongly recommend contacting the authorities, contacting floodlit.org, and reaching out for other resources for help. The issue that I have with the LDS Church and protecting people like this is that they have a big focus on if the person confesses, then they're obviously contrite, they want to repent, and we should forgive them. The problem with that is that the LDS version of forgiveness involves forgive and forget, as in you just wipe it clean as if it never happened. The healthier view to have is to forgive the person because that's about you and not about them. But then to use that information in your future interactions with them. Just because you forgive somebody doesn't mean you have to allow them into your life. It doesn't mean you have to allow them proximity to yourself or to other people. And it certainly doesn't mean you should put yourself in a position to further be harmed by them. The problem with the view of going at this like it is a sin is that the church leaders just believe that it's going to go away. And especially with someone who moves around as much as Jeff Rock did, they probably believed that the allegations of one location would not follow him to the next location. And maybe they thought that he was going to just clean slate himself when he got to a new place instead of continuing the same behavior. I love the way that Chase Hughes frames this on the behavior panel. He says that the organism is going to do what has made the organism successful in the past. And so this type of behavior does not end if it goes unchecked. In fact, it usually gets worse, and predators usually get bolder and have even more victims down the line. It's not a matter of if there are other victims out there. I'm certain there are other victims out there. So if you are one of those, I want to give you my full support and strength. You can reach out to me at askmegan@gmail.com. But most importantly, I hope that you will reach out to local authorities and to someone in the mental health profession so that you can get the help and the healing that you need. Again, these problems do not just go away and they don't get better with age. If you have been a victim of this man or anyone else, I just offer you all the strength and the healing and the message that it is possible to heal and to move on and have a happy life. As a survivor of SA myself, I can tell you that the road to recovery is difficult, but it is possible. And I'm here to support you in whatever way that I possibly can. I want this channel to be a place of healing and a place where we expose predators and tell the truth. And I especially want it to be a place where people are not afraid to speak truth to power. The LDS Church is one of the most wealthy organizations on the face of the earth with unlimited resources. They could do more to protect children. I hope that they will do even one small thing and make even one small change to protect children. That is always my hope, and that is always my call to action. If you are a faithful member of the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints and you care about the organization that you devote so much of your time and faith and energy and money to, I hope that you will be a voice for change within the church by encouraging leaders to call 911. SA of children is not a sin, it is a crime. And if we don't protect children, we have utterly failed as a society and especially as a religion. I wish you all the best in your healing, and I hope that you will support each other and take care of yourselves above everything else. Be good to you.
And you still all have open minds.
Yes.